work in social media. Like that's kind of, it's the stereotypical thing of like, oh yeah, you post on Instagram, you do a reel, or you do all that.
Market, being social media, there's just so many trends and things going on. It's kind of something that most people, even those in that role, don't really fully understand all the pieces.
It's not just curating content and kind of cutting up with these post ideas that just to throw up throughout the month. It really is making sure that you are pinpointing all those points for your audience and, you know.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Challenge Tunity podcast. I'm Chris Lawson, your host. We have a very interesting episode today. I feel like I say that every episode, but today we're going to be diving very deep into social media from the lens of one of our own team members who our clients love. But before we dive deep into that, I'm joined by my co-host, Jordan Wolf, who, believe it or not, a real true fact about him is even though his last name is Wolf, he could not get a dog that was not a wolf. He actually has a dog that's part wolf.
That one's actually true. We got a true one in there.
They're all true. They're all true.
Yeah.
We got to keep people guessing, Jordan. But yeah, you do. You have a dog that is. Why don't you talk about your dog? Because people love dogs.
Well, she's a wolf hybrid, but yes, we rescued her from an organization that rescues dogs from the Yukon territories in Canada, and
wow.
She's same kind of mixed breed that they used in Game of Thrones. So a little bit of shepherd, a little bit of husky, a little bit of wolf, and she's amazing. She's getting a little old, but
what's her name?
Many days hiking, Kari.
Yeah. Well, maybe this is where we'll put a picture of Kari in front of everybody. So if you're watching on YouTube, you can see a picture of Kari. And there Kari goes. Kari's gone now. Now, you've had her for a long, long time. This is a big part of your life. But our staff have come to love your dog. And so have our clients. So the amount of times that we'll be on Zoom or something like that, and Kari walks by in the background, and the meeting has to halt. It has to stop. Every client goes, "Stop what you're saying. We need to talk about your wolf that's walking in your office right now." What's that been like?
When I'm at home, she's a big dog. She's about 100 pounds, so she just kind of like forces her way through the door into my office and then flops down in the corner. So. Yeah, you never know when the dog's going to make an appearance, but she's like walking around with her is like walking around with a celebrity beside you. You can get stopped a lot and asked questions, and yeah.
Very different than in my life where I have a golden retriever puppy. Very cute, but just full of sunshine and wants to lick and jump and be, very, very different world that we live in. Well, on that note, we do have, like I said, a very interesting episode coming today. It's not going to be the Chris and Jordan show where we talk in depth about analytics and business management and things like that.
Heard enough
we're
from
joined.
Us anyway.
I know. I'm sure our emails are just full of bring someone else on. We have Leanne joining us from our office, a fan favorite, a client favorite. What was the reason? Like, why did we want to bring Leanne onto the podcast, Jordan?
Well, Leanne's very passionate, fairly new into the industry. I mean, coming out of school, making those first few strides into a very competitive, very complex market. Being in social media, there's just so many trends and things going on. It's kind of something that most people, even those in that role, don't really fully understand all the pieces to it. So Leanne, better than anybody else, has a really good understanding of how to view those things, especially what's currently going on. And so whether you're running a business or maybe taking those first few steps yourself into the similar kind of career in social media, or maybe it's just something that somebody threw on your desk and said like, hey, figure out our social media. This will be great for you to kind of give you a pretty good lay of the land and also give you an insight as to how the professional side of that is taken care of.
I would second all of that. And I'd probably add that it's very rare that you have somebody that's on your team that just wants to gobble up every bit of every single thing to do with every single part of social media. Like you'll have people that are just great at ads or just great at creating assets or the writing part of it, or they love the analytics, but she wants to do everything and she wants to do it the best she can. And she's excited by the trends and the shifts and the changes that are happening. And if you know anything about social media, that is literally what social media is nowadays. It's constantly evolving.
It's inspiring. So,
is.
let's start getting into it and stop yammering about it and let everyone meet Leanne.
All right. Let's let the interview roll.
All right. Welcome back. As promised, we have a guest today. Our guest is Leanne Matson. Leanne is a social media specialist, yes, at our good old agency Atrium, but in her own right, also not only a social media specialist, but also obsessed with book collecting and a reader. And I guess you have a small library at this point in the hundreds of books, hundreds of tomes. Do you call them tomes?
No, I don't. I should. That would be very fun. But I am definitely on the way to getting myself a little library. That's the goal. So
How many books do you actually have?
I would say, if I have to guess, last time I counted, I think it was like 350. So I'm probably close to 375, almost 400.
And have you read every single book?
No, that's why I put myself on a book buying ban this year because I can't buy any of my books because I have to make sure I read them all. So I just keep buying new books.
Which book is the one that you're dying to read that you have not read yet?
Ooh, that's a good question. Cassandra Clare recently came out with her newest book that I have not read yet because I have to reread the series to remember what happened. So, Chain of Thorns by Cassandra Clare is sitting on my bookshelf. It's a big one. It's like that thick, I would probably say. It's a thick one. So,
And last question before I pass it to Jordan. Have any of your pets eaten any of your books? Because my dog has definitely eaten its share of books.
no, I can't say I have. Cats don't usually eat books. I don't know. City does use them as a pillow, so she likes them as pillows, but not as meals now.
Well, as much as we're here for a little bit of side stories about books and libraries, we are really here for our audience who would probably like to hear more about the social media side of things, as we are a marketing and business podcast. So, maybe we'll just kind of get a little background about your particular viewpoint, this kind of lens that you take a view into the marketing world. Social media is a big topic. It's probably one of the most common ones we hear from clients before working with us at the agency. It's probably the title or part of the title of most marketing related articles produced over the last 10 years or so. But give us a little background about you personally. Like, how did you end up in focusing on, and why did you want to focus on social media more than, say, any other marketing side of marketing? Now, I know we picked you kind of out of some of your you had done in some time at another agency, spending a little bit of work there, but we've spent a good amount of time working with us. But let's let the audience figure that out, how they've gotten to this point.
Yeah, no, I kind of came across social media, like I stumbled across it throughout my university classes. We did one course of just like online communication basically, and we kind of had someone who came in and kind of was a guest lecturer talking about how she did the social media marketing for, I think it was ATB or some bank, and she was talking about how she kind of made it a fun thing for the bank and made it really personable, and I think that was where I was like, that sounds like a very fun thing to do. And then in the latter half of my university career, I was just really thinking about how can I help businesses on social media, especially throughout with big 2020, 2021, and everything that we know happened in those years. I was kind of just thinking about how everything went digital. It was like, social media is a great avenue to help out businesses in that sense. And I think that was just kind of what intrigued me to it mostly.
That's an interesting lens. Yeah. Like taking that kind of pandemic lens where everyone kind of unintentionally digitized themselves for a few years. It really was the world in a lot of ways. Is that kind of how you view it?
Basically, because I feel like all of us ended up scrolling on social media at some point, and we were just scrolling through, and I just saw all these businesses, and especially local businesses that were just posting and getting kind of ramping up their posting on social media because it was one of their only ways they could actually communicate with their audience, at least like
Yeah.
regularly. And so, yeah, I think that was just what really fed it to me. I was just like, I just saw all these businesses doing things, and I was just like, I would love to help them out because I always have been on social media. Like, I've been an active user, active poster. I do have an Instagram for my reading. I have a bookstagram, so that was kind of my
A
feed into it
bookstagram.
of, yes.
Wow.
TM. Yeah.
It's like book talk, but on Instagram. Yeah.
I am definitely not in this world.
No.
So
You'll
why
learn
did you
to read yet. You'll
reading
figure
is
it
hard.
out.
I was thinking you can. I don't know. My phone just reads them to me. I don't know. Okay, so but what? So, I mean, the world of digital marketing. There's all these different segments, right? Especially in the agency world. There's social. There's search marketing. There's online advertising through dozens of channels. Conversion rate optimization, inbound marketing. Then you get into graphics and design and strategy and UX, and yeah, it keeps going on forever. Why didn't you get into those things? Like, what was it just about trying to help businesses through social, or was there something within social that grabbed you as opposed to, say, being an ad specialist and getting your Google cert and all those types of things?
It started out mostly just wanting to do social media. Like, it kind of was just like
Mm-hmm.
I might have fallen into like the slight trap of it seeming like a very fun thing to do, but then once I learned more of it, and like Jordan mentioned, I interned with an agency and did that for a couple of months and kind of saw like the more nitty-gritty side of it. And I think that was where I got even more excited with it and wanted
Interesting.
to even learn more about it and kind of learn more about not just the posting side, but the actual, the whole strategy side of things and actually making sure that we're, doing well on social and actually accomplishing business goals. So
Yeah, I think that's probably from the outside, one of the most common critiques, or even in the industry. Like, there's lovers and haters of social media, and I think it really comes down to the baggage that gets brought along with it. Like, there's expectations of what that means, and it comes from a variety of different sources. Some of that's in the media. It's kind of in a lot of situations, like those articles I mentioned earlier. It's a hot topic, and it's sometimes sold as a cure-all. And then so you get business leaders and people that are not familiar with social media or the ins and outs of it going like, oh, well, that's what I need. That's how I do marketing these days. And it's somewhat true. There's always a grain of truth to those things. The kind of real proof of power for social media is, okay, if you're on the other extreme, you don't believe in social media. Well, how many hours today did you probably spend on social media? Probably a lot. Probably a lot this week, probably a lot this year. So if it's nothing, then that's a lot of hours for you to not have impact in marketing. So obviously it's a big thing for our day-to-day lives these days in a modern world, but it's also probably not really considered a cure-all. It has its strengths and its weaknesses. It's things it can do and cannot. And it can also be seen as really superficial, I think, is probably another common critique. Do you get those, or do you wrestle with those kind of myths or baggage yourself?
I think so. I feel like any social media marketer can relate on that sense of just a lot of times there is that just superficial kind of side of it where, okay, yeah, you work in social media. Like that's kind of, it's the stereotypical thing of like, oh yeah, you post on Instagram, you do a reel or you do all that. And I think you see that a lot with clients, especially when you lean into the more B2B side of things where they're just thinking, this isn't going to do anything for me. Why should I take this seriously? But there is a lot of benefit for a lot of businesses to be on social media. And I think
Mm-hmm.
it's really important to make sure that you can, show that to them. And like, I think that's the funnest part of it is kind of teaching them and showing them the value of it. And then you can kind of see them as you kind of go through and they learn of like, oh, this is actually a big value for us. Like this is going
Mm-hmm.
really well. So.
Well, I find too the I don't know, maybe it's a misconception, maybe it's a myth, maybe it's just something that people have to, drink. They have to drink the Kool-Aid to really come to the conclusion. But it's not about social media. Like it's not just social media. Like it's a platform for online communication and fun. It's like when you're running it, you have to understand design for the purpose of conversions and engagement. You have to understand how to be a content writer and provide value and insight and how to write it in such a way that gets the engagement again. You have to understand analytics and software and posting and trends, and that could all be within the topic of one network. Then you get into another network and another network and another and another, and they're all unique. And so this whole idea of, it just is, it becomes a black hole, really, to those who are not understanding how to utilize it properly. What has been the number one thing coming into your role as a social media specialist that kind of blew you away, kind of pushed you back? Wow, okay, I never really realized it when you joined an agency or you got into that role that, you didn't know when you first came in.
For me, it was definitely the analytical side of it. Like it really is like it's the numbers behind everything and how you can, really kind of interpret all those things to actually kind of, decipher its meaning and kind of learn the audience and kind of learn in that sense of what they're liking, what they're not. I think it really is, something that you don't really realize until you get into the actual back end of it and learn what's going on of, there's a lot of strategy that goes into it. It's not just posting, it's not just curating content and kind of cutting up with these post ideas that just to throw up throughout the month. It really is making sure that you are pinpointing all those points for your audience and, creating content that caters to each individual service that you have or each individual like interest that they might need or anything like that.
Yeah, it is really complex. And in addition to the complexity, it's not something that you just learn really quickly. Mm-mm. It takes time to figure out all these things. And then even if you understand it as a social media specialist, you have to somehow teach this or educate or prove the ROI is there or showcase why the strategy or the methodology you're implementing is going to actually make an impact on that organization, that non-for-profit, that business. And so then you get into the world of, sure, you understand the analytics, but then you have to lay it out in a way that simplifies something that is so complex. So how have you found that part of it?
I think that's been the biggest learning curve throughout this whole journey of just figuring out how to actually just portray what I'm trying to say to clients and get them to understand everything. And also it just sometimes feels like you're a broken record sometimes because you have multiple clients and a lot of times they are trying to achieve at least sometimes overlapping goals in a sense where there's only so many metrics, only so many things that you can track in socials, and you're having to explain this specific metric over and over and making sure that they understand it. And I think, making sure that I'm able to actually, tailor my meetings or any sort of time that I'm talking with a client to make sure that they understand it and kind of speaking their language, I think has been the biggest learning curve for me of just I deal with different clients from different industries and they're all trying to, work towards some goals that of their own within their business. And it's just the biggest thing is making sure that they understand the value of their social media and how it's contributing to their success and everything.
Yeah, it's also not especially when you get back to the data isn't it's not linear. Like when you look at advertising, it's like, well, how many impressions did I get? And then from them, a certain percentage become clicks. And from them, a certain percentage become, leads. And from them, a certain percentage become sales, right? So you have this pretty clean funnel a lot of the times in many other areas of marketing. But social media, it's like post to post to post is almost like its own mini campaign to some degree. And I think, unfortunately, clients can come in not as aware of that difference, and they might expect every post to be everything versus one post might be focused on, I just want to get people exposed to we're here and we're in this place. Other posts might be a little bit more into getting an engagement to a conversation started. Other ones might be more sales related or getting people to perform a certain action or grow the community. And those types of things are separate. They can be combined into a single campaign or a single post, but those are usually a series of posts over, series of weeks or months or even quarters to achieve those objectives. So it can be pretty obscure. And that's I think where the challenge of you were saying it's difficult to find ways to communicate these ideas to clients, because I don't think it's as cut and dry as it used to be in the Mad Men days of like, oh, I put this billboard up and that's probably going to be seen by 1 million people and done, hope you liked it. This is much more complex and not always cut and dry and obvious.
It's true. Well, I mean, maybe just kind of pivoting more into the actual topic of social media and platforms and things like that. In the last year, well, over the last number of years, there's just been so many changes within digital marketing and human behavioral patterns and buyers' journeys, and social's changed a lot. Ownership of social networks have changed. There's just a lot. What do you think has been the biggest change in the last, let's say the last year, in your own opinion?
My answer for this would probably be one of Jordan's most interesting topics that he likes to bring up with our clients, which would be social media as a search engine and how it's growing in that way of almost replacing Google in a lot of ways for, Gen Z, millennials, where, we're not turning to Google, we're turning to things like TikTok or Instagram and doing our industry research that way and finding, whatever it is, from skincare products to a restaurant to different programs. That's the biggest growth I think I've seen. And I think TikTok has been the biggest driver of that. And you're starting to see it across basically all the platforms now. They're following in that with the, they're tailoring SEO and making sure that keywords are triggering in your content so that, things are coming up in those search results in those platforms.
Well, and it just shows and emphasizes the importance of organizations being relevant with the platforms that the world is using. We saw this years ago. Building a website was all you really needed, right? And then your rankings mattered. Oh, and then you have to be mobile responsive. And that was about as simple as it got. But now you kind of have to have your fingertips in 1,000 different things, and you have to do each of them well to really get the traction, because the landscape is probably as competitive as it's ever been. Mm-hmm. So, that being said, you're a social media specialist, so you're involved every day. But if you're a general manager at a business and you're tasked to be on top of social media, or, maybe you're just starting out, or maybe you're an older marketer, right? You've been a marketing coordinator for a couple decades. You started off in print, and now you're expected to be an analyst and do all these things. How does somebody stay on top of social media trends? How do you stay in the loop? What would be your tips? Spill the beans.
Spill the tea.
Mm-hmm.
I think the best way is to think of which platforms your audience is on and stay on those platforms. Scroll through them, see what's happening on there. If you know that your audience is on Instagram, stay on Instagram, see what trends are happening on there. A lot of times trends don't always carry over between platforms. Maybe what's, hot on TikTok isn't going to be hot on LinkedIn. So it's really important to make sure you understand your audience, because not all trends are going to matter to your specific audience. So it's good to make sure that, you are keeping up with things and not posting a trend that maybe your 20-year-old social media intern saw, got really excited and wanted to do, and it doesn't really touch base with your, maybe older audiences or anything like that, and they don't understand it, and it's kind of a miss. So.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it's a difficult thing to, stay on the pulse of something that's changing as rapidly as it is. And it is, like I said, pretty obscure to a lot of people. They're seeing maybe the social media in their personal lives is very different than the social media in the business world as well. The undercurrents that make something work as a business page don't really translate on a personal level, even though that's probably what they're experiencing day to day, and not even realizing when those businesses have kind of injected themselves into a conversation or showed up in their feed in a way that, maybe they enjoyed in the moment, but they're not really thinking about the science of how that actually happened or how that was able to impact them in that way. In the end, it comes down to where, like you said, where's your audience, but how many hours are they spending of their day on certain places is another way to look at it. We're going after time and influence, and if people are spending time here, then you need to be there and make sure that you then experiment a little too. Because I think a lot of things that happen in social media that I've observed is you can call yourself an expert to some degree, but in a lot of ways you're an expert of trying things and finding out what sticks. And especially as these new networks emerge, or new different technologies within those networks or post types, the whole community is not really 100% sure where it's going to go, or how people are going to respond once 1,000 businesses start trying to do the same thing at the same time. That you kind of just figure out as you go along.
Well, and I think
that's the thing as well, keeping up with trends and staying ahead. Listen to your social media manager. When they say a trend is happening, let them post it. Don't let it go through so many cycles of approvals that it gets posted 2 months late. And then you just look very inexperienced and like you're late on the trends. Let your social media manager step in and be like, this is happening right now. Let's be one of the first to take advantage of this. And then you're kind of leading the curve in that way, not just following it. Here's
Leanne advocating for all social media specialists out there that are struggling to get their approvals. Okay, so I mean, we're seeing real world ads happening in the online advertising world, right? We're seeing AI content popping all over, and we're seeing, new softwares and tools and all these things surrounding every single type of network or channel or marketing, avenue. Obviously in social, there's a lot happening as well. If you were to fast forward a number of years from now, I mean, where do you see social media heading? Is it going to be the same? Is it going to change? Is it going to evolve? Where is it going to evolve? How is it going to change?
It's so hard to say, because it really can, things can happen in an instant, because we all saw what happened with Twitter. You never know, things might happen. Things can get shut down. I mean, Vine was like a huge hit for the longest time for 6 years, and then it was just gone. So you really can't say what will happen to a social media platform, but really I think it's going to continue ramping up. I think a lot of businesses especially are seeing the value of social media and the value of being authentic on social media. Not just ads, not just those kind of like very transparent posts where they're just trying to get sales. People are becoming a lot more authentic. You can see the personal side of people on social media, and I think that's going to become even more prevalent now, especially with the growth of things like AI and all these automation companies and things like that, where it's really important for people to see the human side of your company. And I think that's where the biggest way that social media should be heading is, keeping that personable side forward.
Well, I think personality or the person, keeping it personal and relevant, right? Contextual, I think is important. And we see these trends. You see it on LinkedIn, you see it on whatever, where it's all about quality, and then all of a sudden it's all about volume. And every post you do, you have to have 10 comments and likes on 10 other posts. And it's, this mathematical equation that, social media experts have figured out. It seems like it's going back to quality again, and consistency, and being on top of things, and trying to entice engagement and things like that over just blitzing people and causing people to be retractors of your brand, kind of thing. So hopefully we stay in that world for a little while, because I think we can all agree on this line that we all want to see stuff that actually matters. I think we're all tired of just scrolling through our social channels, with a numb mind, not caring anymore.
Yeah, I think the reason I focused so much, like Leanne mentioned, that kind of insight about younger generations using social media as a means to kind of like figure out what companies are doing or how they fit in the marketplace. They're even, when they're going there, they're not replacing the website. The website, for my generation was like, okay, you tell me what you do and I'll take your word for it. And if it's nice, I'll give you a shot and I'll do a phone call and we'll see. We'll see if that actually resonates with me, and I'll do my gut check. But a lot of ways, they're kind of blending those two things with the social media. In my experience, it's like they're making the gut check and learning about your business at the same time. So they want to know, like, how do I feel about working with these people? Like, what is it like to, work with this company or to be an employee there? Do I appreciate that? Do I get a sense that they're on top of things, that they're on the current? Are they thought leaders or not? Do they have something unique to kind of make them stand out? And they'll probably do this with another company and view all their socials. They're trying to do things that they were not even relevant or possible on a website alone in the past. So really understanding that shift, I felt, was really important, regardless of what networks happen in the future or things. I think that trend may continue, which I think is quite powerful to be on top of.
Well, I think if we're kind of going down that path, I mean, we're really touching base on the topic of a buyer's journey, right? And, if you think of any business, any organization, there's objectives they're trying to accomplish within their corporate structure, right? It's a revenue target. It's we want the best employees, so we're focusing on careers, or there's a certain sector or segment of our business that gets us more revenue. We need to push that service or whatever it is. There's always this objective. And back to what you're talking about, where generations ago, it was just a website. You Googled it, you went to that website. If they were number one, you trusted it, away you went. That buyer's journey is very different. Social media's impact on that buyer's journey is not just as simple as people are looking in TikTok or on Instagram or whatever. They're also utilizing it as social proof. They're going there and they're starting to go, okay, cleaning company, before I let your cleaners into my house, I want to see how you feel about this movement. I want to see what values you stand for. I want to see if you align with the type of things that I believe in. And so, how you portray that is very important. Showcasing the quality of your work and things like that is often done on social now, as opposed to just on a website or a printed 3-fold brochure or something like that. So I mean,
yeah, I think social can touch on any point of the buyer's journey, really. Like it can be where they're discovering you and they come across your social media and they're like, oh, hey, this is what I'm looking for and what can you provide me? And then it touches on all the other stages as well, of like if they come up on your social feed and they're thinking, like, maybe I'm in the decision-making phase and you're trying to figure out which one you actually want, and you think, I'm going to go through this channel and figure out how to actually contact them. All social media profiles have that call button. They all have that email. They all have that some sort of way to contact you. And then even extends past that, where you're still maintaining that customer relationship too, of, you are showcasing your values. You're kind of representing the fact that you stand out from the competition, in the sense that, you have a certain aspect of your company that people connect to, that they respect. They respect the customers and things like that. So social media can really set your company apart in a lot of ways, especially if your competition isn't on social media. You can be very personal in that sense and create that stronger connection with your customers.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it's important for us to also just state that, we're talking about the organic side of it versus the ads, right? The earned versus the paid. Because like you just said, people can contact you on your social media, and it's very common for a lot of businesses. It is essential, right? There's a whole triage of direct messages that, you go through to pass people off to tech support or whatever the case might be. But there's also the paid side, which at Atrium we separate. That's an online advertising segment, and not that you don't know how to do that, Leanne. That's just you measure it differently and so on. But there's things like lead forms and things like that exist within social media, where, if you're an organization and you don't think that social media can be a lead generator for you, you can literally have them convert right then and there, and their information gets pulled directly in, and boom, the lead is sent off to you. They don't even have to leave and click on a link and go through 4 or 5 steps to get to that point. So the world of social media has evolved to the point where it's an ecosystem on its own. You don't have to leave that ecosystem in a lot of cases.
Yeah. I think even like today we've talked, you've spoken from the perspective of a social media specialist, but even that means different things in different environments. So like at our agency Atrium, it's very much focused on organic. It's very narrowly focused in one area where you're able to then really know that really deeply, be really good at that kind of social. Some other agencies, they treat social, like you were saying, very broadly. It includes ads, it includes all these other types of things. There's certain skills where you're going to shine, I think, in this discipline as an individual. But it's, again, just like even trying to be a marketing unicorn these days, you can't know everything. You can't even know everything in social and be like proficient at all of it. You can't be a great videographer and a great graphic designer and a great storyteller and do all the analytics and all the research stuff and be like top of your game on all of it. It's too much. It's too much. So are there certain skill sets that you yourself try to lean into and kind of make your own flavor of social media?
I think for me, it really leans on to the fact that, you really have to be open to being a like lifelong learner, essentially, of
Mm,
not just learning different skills, but learning what's happening with each platform. Like platforms can change daily. Like you can log on to Instagram, Facebook, any of those platforms, and something is different, and you need to learn what's different, and you need to pivot with that. And it really comes down to that research side of things too, where you're able to kind of dive into things and you're open to like researching the internet and finding different blogs or finding different, like speakers on social media who are talking about changes that are upcoming or upcoming trends or things that are happening, and staying on top of that so that you can, keep an eye out for things, stay ahead of that curve. But also, if you fall behind, then you can easily catch back up because you're open to learning. You're not closed minded, you're not rigid in your ways, and you're able to catch up in that sense.
If I was to press for one more bonus question, if you were to inspire that next up and coming social media specialist with that in mind, like, are there certain things that you would encourage them to do to take their first steps into that world or to building those skills?
Should I say be like Nike and just do it? Like, I think you really need to just take that step and go for it. I mean, like,
sit
I
on a
think
grass, not
it,
your dreams.
there you go. We worked it in. Absolutely. It really can seem like a very intimidating industry to get into because it can seem very saturated. But if you find your niche, if you find your specialty in it, you can set yourself apart. You can, become like a really strong expert in the field and kind of maybe find a specific industry that you really want to do social media for and then do social for a bunch of those industries, or kind of branch out and try a bunch of different things. I think it's just really, you just need to duck your head down and go for it. Like you can't quite be a little bit nervous. You kind of need to just kind of dive in
Yeah.
and try new things, give it all a shot, see what you'll like, because there really is so many different avenues in social media that you can try, that there's always going to be something new that's coming along that you're going to be able to give an opportunity for.
And it's okay to fail. It's okay to make
Absolutely.
mistakes. You're not a brain surgeon. I mean, like it's okay to experiment and test things out and
Yeah.
learn, because where you are in year one is going to be very different where you are in year two, let alone year 5 or
Hmm.
6. So,
Hmm.
um, giving yourself that leniency and freedom to be able to kind of make mistakes, I think is important. Unless you're
Well, I know
Leanne, you're not
we've
allowed to make mistakes
Yeah, I just need to be perfect.
all the
yeah
time.
yeah. Well, I know we covered quite a bit today, and social media clearly is a very, very deep topic. So hopefully it was pretty approachable for those that might be looking at this as a career direction, or might be inspired by this as part of your marketing mix and where to go with it, and kind of how we on the agency side, or maybe even from your business, can start approaching some of these new trends, looking into these new platforms and the strange terminology and measurements that we have to do along the way. But thanks for joining us today, Leanne. It's been a pleasure talking with you in this Challenge Toonie special episode.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for having me. I'm a big fan of the podcast. I watched every episode.
Well, wonder why. I wonder if it's incorporated into our social media or somehow. Yeah.
I think it's a good podcast. I don't know.
I agree.
Well, Leanne, thank
Well,
you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Cheers.
Well, thanks for joining us today. It was fantastic to have Leanne also join us as our guest. And hopefully you got quite a bit out of that. And hopefully we were inspired. Like we talked about at the beginning of our podcast, Leanne knows quite a bit about the passions that come from social media and how diverse that can be, as well as all the ins and outs of the trends that you got to be on top of. So hopefully different people got a little bit of everything out of that today, and whether you're starting in that career or not, or whether you're a business just trying to make your way through those rocky waters of social media, I think today was quite a bit of detail and a lot of fun.
I agree. I think it was great having her. I mean, we do have a great team. We have a whole plethora of people we could pull from if we really wanted to. But Leanne is one of those people that she's passionate and she can kind of just cut to the chase and tell you how things are, because she lives it every single day. I guess it's that time. It's that time in the podcast where we remind everybody that although you're in this episode, there's actually a whole bunch of other ones. So don't forget to go to all of our social media channels and like and subscribe and do all those types of things that are important to people following other podcasts. We are on YouTube. If you're following us on any of our streaming platforms, we'd encourage you, come back every couple of weeks. We have another episode always around the corner. So that being said, we appreciate you. Thanks for joining us this week, and we look forward to talking to you again in a couple more. Cheers.